The Fall is an absolute cluster of a film. I went into it mostly blind. I'd pretty much heard that, if you have a big fear of heights, it's going to absolutely mess you up, and that it was about two women climbing a big tower to get over the death of a boyfriend or something like that. And I thought, look, as someone who unceremoniously shits himself every time he has to change a light bulb, this is really going to mess with me, and I kind of came out disappointed. There were about two scenes in the entire movie that were right after each other, where the girls were dangling off the very top platform that kind of messed me just a little bit. But apart from that, I was actually really surprised. A lot of the scenes of them dangling down a rope just looked like they're done in front of a green screen, which was really weird when the director then came out and said that they filmed it practically. Like, I don't care what he says about how they built certain towers and all, and how they positioned them on edges of cliffs to try and make it look like it was taller than it was, but I don't know, it just didn't do anything for me. The fall effects made the effects from Die Hard look modern, so you kind of know you've messed everything up. It also really didn't help that when I'd heard this was about two women doing an extreme thing to get over a boy, I immediately joked with my girlfriend that it was 47 metres up the movie. Just 47 metres down minus the sharks. Of course, then when you mention 47 metres down, you've got to tell the other person the amazingly shit twist where it was all a dream at the end of the movie. Well, fuck. Color me entirely not surprised when about 20 minutes before the end of the movie I see my girlfriend just look at me suspiciously every time they drop one of their ridiculously not so subtle hints that it was all a hallucination. They made the same movie twice. Just one's underwater with sharks and the other one's in the sky with fucking vultures. The story starts with our main girl Becky climbing a cliff face with her best friend Hunter and her boyfriend Dan. Dan falls to his death. The movie jumps 51 weeks into the future. Yes, seriously, it says 51 weeks because it thinks we're too stupid to realise about the anniversary of his death coming up, even when three separate characters all mention, literally every character who's on screen at any point in this entire fucking movie mentions it's the anniversary of his death. I'm surprised the ghost didn't come back to also just let her know to make sure that we caught on. Becky isn't handling it well, or I don't know, she might be. Since that we had such a long time skip and none of the characters who interacted with her during that time skip show up in the movie, we have no idea what's actually happened to her, but apparently she's now an alcoholic and has let herself go, I guess, despite being a young, attractive woman with perfectly done hair, a thin body, and pristine skin. But we do know that she fell out with a dad at some point during this and hasn't seen her best friend since the death, so, like I said, we have no idea what actually happened to her during this time period. Like, does she work? Did she get fired? Like, what the fuck actually happened? Becky's drunk at the bar one night, phoning her dead boyfriend's mobile phone number, which is a fucking incredibly overused cliche. She's doing it just so she can listen to his voice, but then by the time she gets home totally drunk, service has somehow been cut that exact moment, which of course leads her to want to take a whole bunch of pills. Her best friend then shows up that exact night at that exact moment after not seeing her for 51 weeks, convinces her that to get her life back in order she needs to climb the fourth highest structure in America, and they head off and climb it. It leads to them getting stuck at the top because for some reason the ladder breaks all the way down, even though it shouldn't because of the dish being in the way. The best friend dies, Becky overcomes her fear of living in order to survive, and that's really it to sum up the movie. I found myself so fucking bored in the middle stretch, mainly because there's lots of plot contrivances to try and stretch out the second and third act. Out of all of them, personally my favourite of the contrivances is that I noticed a guy having a barbecue a couple miles away. Look, this guy was there in an RV when they collapsed the ladder. So he didn't hear that, he didn't think it was suspicious when he went on a walk the next day and he found the collapsed ladder. Didn't find it suspicious at all when they threw their shoes at him from 2 kilometers up with pinpoint accuracy. But no, they finally signal him with a flare gun when it gets dark, draws attention, he looks through binoculars and he sees them, and then he decides to steal their car and leave. Because everyone in the entire fucking world that they could have signaled, they stumbled upon the one redneck who sees 2 attractive young white girls in trouble, and instead of helping them, he decides to steal their beat-up, rusty old shitty car. Alright, whatever. It's also revealed the best friend has been sleeping with the husband, and it's revealed in, the fucking worst way possible. Firstly, with the best friend giving Becky her phone to look through, and she sees a photo where, the best friend is smiling at a man off screen, and he's got his hand on her shoulder. The best friend immediately becomes, really suspicious, being like, oh no, never mind, forget about that, don't look at that one, it's fine. And it's very clear the husband's skin tone. This is about 20 minutes in, so by that point we already know this, but it takes until about an hour in before it's finally revealed, because apparently the husband is the only person in the entire world who can't say I love you, so he specifically taps it out on people. Not even in Morse code, but instead as 143 for the number of letters in each word, and Hunter got this tattooed on her ankle, which of course is only revealed because coincidentally they have to take off her shoe and her sock for just that 1 foot at one point. It adds nothing to the story, except to give some drama between the two during the second act and prolong them sitting on the platform for an extra 10 fucking minutes. The best friend's death scene and the whole fake out that falls is really, really poorly done because we're pretty much 2 days into the story at this point and they've dropped their bag down to land on one of the satellite dishes. So, the satellite dish is about 55 feet below them. So, you think with a 50-foot rope that they have, they should be able to get down to it fairly well. But for some fucking reason, the best friend decides to connect the rope to the central tower, which means it's about 8 to 10 feet shorter than it should be. So she gets down, can't get back up to the rope, ends up hooking the bag back onto it, jumps up, falls, ends up dying, all that malarkey. Now the thing is, we saw her falling. We heard a really big bang, which was clearly her hitting the satellite dish. The best friend's sitting there, she's all shocked, she can't look over the edge, until she finally does, and she just sees the best friend sitting on the bag being like, hey, lucky me, I somehow caught the rope, do you want to pull me up? And from that very nanosecond, I knew she was dead. Like, usually these movies try and leave breadcrumbs for you to follow, kind of like Scrubs or something like that, where if you watch it back afterwards, you're like, oh shit, I just realized, holy hell. This movie, leaves breadcrumbs and occasionally just has a character walk over to the breadcrumbs and shout, hey guys, look at these breadcrumbs over here. Guys, do you notice that? There's some breadcrumbs. What the hell? For a lot of people, I'm sure they ignored or didn't hear the really loud bang that proved that she died immediately. But the movie can't just do that as your hint. They also have to include Becky dreaming about her best friend's dead body. They make it specifically clear to show that Hunter never touches anything or physically really interacts with the main character at any point after that. They have scenes where Becky will drop a bag and Hunter will just kind of stare at it and watch it fall past her without attempting to catch it. And instead of just leaving that as kind of an obvious hint as it is, they instead have Becky specifically go up to her and go hey, why didn't you catch that bag there? And the friend's It's just so incredibly fucking awkward. It was yeah, okay, I get it. And it's this point where I just saw my girlfriend just slowly leaning into my peripheral vision, staring at me. I'm like, look, I'm sorry I spoiled the movie, I didn't know. Speaking of breadcrumbs, the movie just feels the need to explain why everything happens. Everything that happens in the second half of the movie is pretty much foreshadowed in the first half, such as in the second half, Hunter gets eaten by vultures, so in the first half they have Hunter take pictures of dead animals get eaten by vultures and joke about them getting eaten. In the second half, Becky eats a vulture, so of course in the first half you had Hunter point out, well, if you're desperate enough, you'll eat anything. They're eating a vulture bit. It's also hilarious because she beats it to death and it's a giant stuffed toy, and she rips it apart with her bare hands. It's pretty funny. In the second half, the drone runs out of battery at one point. Well, in the first half, her phone runs out of battery, which leads to her getting a life hack taught to her where you can charge a phone through a light socket, which is just... It was a real experience when you saw it happen and go oh, I can't wait to see how this comes up later on. Their drone gets hit by a truck in the second half. Well, the first half just showed them nearly getting hit by a truck. Becky can climb all the way to the top of this thin pole to reach the warning beacon. Well, I don't know, fuck it. Show a single clip of her pole dancing on a night out and be oh, they're basically the same thing. With how blatant they were being at it, checklist in my head, and everything I was waiting to happen eventually did happen. Well, except one. They made a really big point about the warning, flashing beacon at the top of the tower and how it was a danger to air traffic. So in my head, I thought, okay, they're going to be clever, they're going to smash it, someone's going to have to rush out and repair it, because like I said, it's a danger to air traffic, and they'll get saved. No, they only mentioned it to say, look how tall the tower is, guys. It's tall. It's really tall. You mentioned it's 2 kilometers tall repeatedly. I get it. You don't need to be oh, it's planes sometimes, Planes, guys. And we come to one of the biggest issues. 47 Meters Down is a dog shit movie where a woman's pretty much convinced to go diving in a shark cage to get over her husband leaving her because he thought she was really boring and she wants to make him jealous and prove that she's exciting by doing something kind of wild. And that's okay, because shark cages are usually perfectly safe and it's understandable when you're on holiday you do something a wee bit wild like get in a shark cage. This ain't that. This is going to your suicidal alcoholic friend's house for the first time in a year on the anniversary of her husband's death where he fell from a great height and asking her if she wants to climb the 4th tallest thing in America with no safety lines. The end of this is meant to be her triumphantly learning to live again, as the movie explains to us at least 6 different fucking times. But if this was real life, they'd be scooping her up with a fucking spatula for a week. Oh yeah, and also talking about a spatula, the final funniest bit of the entire movie that had me laughing so uncomfortably loudly that I couldn't really miss people turning and looking at me. Becky at the end of the movie finally climbs down to her friend's body by hanging the rope lower, so it was incredibly easy this time. And Hunter's body's been lying there for maybe a day and a half, 2 days at this point, being eaten by vultures the whole time in the scorching sun, with her eyes open, and she maybe has like a scratch on her and her eyes are still intact. When Becky gets down there, her plan is that she wants to throw her phone off the side of the tower so it sends a message whilst it's falling. They tried this earlier and it hadn't worked, even though they'd stuck the phone inside Hunter's shoe and rather than like a socks and a padded bra, but it didn't work. So this time she takes off Hunter's shoe, puts her phone inside, and sticks the entire shoe inside Hunter's stomach, and it doesn't cause any deformation or anything like that, and she just plows it on in there with her bare fucking hands. It is fucking hilarious. But it was really the only good bit of the entire movie. So yeah, guys, in general, crappy movie. Don't watch. That's the video. See ya. Bye-bye.